Okay, hello and good morning everyone. Welcome to JFD Brokers Traders Espresso with me, Darius and Anucauskas. Today is the 14th of February 2019, so welcome everyone. Welcome to this Thursday's morning session where we're going to have a look at the markets, a few charts, the usual stuff guys. But before we do that, let's quickly have a read through our risk disclaimer. And the content we produce does not constitute investment advice or investment recommendation, should not be considered as such, and does not in any way constitute an invitation to acquire any financial instrument or product. As always, a few seconds for you to read the rest, and we can continue. Okay, so now then guys, let's quickly jump into the charts. Now the first one I want to touch on here is Nikkei. Now the Japanese index here basically closed today in, well, literally nowhere, to be honest, but the good thing about it is that it still remains above this downside resistance line taken from the high of the 2nd of October. So in a way and also it's kind of trading above this key area of resistance at around 20,975 level, approximately there, of course. So the most important thing is that it's actually also it remains still above the 21,000 level as well. So basically for now we're still going to continue pushing higher. Well, we're going to continue aiming higher, let's put it that way. But for a better confirmation, we would need to see a nice good push above this 21,340 level. So first, because it also coincides here with this 100 EMA here, shown on the day as a green line on the daily chart, and this way, if we do get a nice move above the 21,340 level, then yep, we will initially target the 200 EMA, but slightly above that we do have the 21,875 level, which was marked here by the highs of the 13th of December. So in a way guys, for now you could in a way be very careful, keep your eyes on this little area of potential resistance at around 21,340 level, which also is not far from the 100 EMA. So keep your eyes on this one. If we do get a nice pop, yep, it could open the path towards slightly higher levels. If let's say this decides to reverse back down and drops below the 20,975 level, certainly not all is lost for the bulls yet, because we still have this downside resistance line here that I was talking about, and we could see maybe a nice rebound here from it. Like it could act as a nice trampoline for this index, and then we could see more bulls jumping in and pushing the index higher. But if let's say this starts dropping below this downside resistance line, now this is where the bulls kind of should start worrying, because this could potentially lead towards further declines. But for a better confirmation of the downside, we would need to see a nice good drop here below the 20,350 level, approximately there, and only then we will target lower levels. So for now, of course, the downside is slightly off the table. Let's see what it wants to do with this 21,340 level, if it wants to break it or not. But for now we're just going to continue observing it, because it's a very tricky spot, and given, like I said, given that today's candle ended somewhere just nowhere basically, so it kind of ended in a doji, let's put it that way. So we could see maybe reversal back down, but again, like I said, keep your eyes on these two key support areas. The first one being the 20,975, and the other one is the downside resistance line, which could also kind of support, let's put it that way, if we can say it this way, support the price from dropping lower. So let's see how it plays out. Jumping into gold, Gold is well, it's dragging here, and it's a bit of a drag. Let's see, so it continues to trade above this very short-term upside support line taken from the lows of the 14th of November. It's not far from it. We still have the arrow like this. You can see that we're still kind of looking for a possible maybe rebound here and a push higher. For now, to be honest, it's also a bit of a hold for us, because in order to kind of, let's say, get more comfortable with the with the upside, we would need to see a nice good push above the 13.16 level, something like that, approximately there. This way we could then target the 13.26 or above, but for now it's kind of at the moment you can see that it's kind of slowly dragging lower, but towards this upside support line. And in a way, as long as this upside support line remains intact, of course that this will support the bulls. But if, let's say, this suddenly drops below the upside support line and then eventually drops below the 1297 level, now this is where the bulls should start worrying, because well, I mean, we could see more sellers coming in here and potentially driving this one lower towards the 1276 area. And then, of course, if we do get to this point, we'll just take it from there and see what it wants to do further. But for now, long story short, guys, basically we are still keeping a close eye on this upside support line. Of course, let's see if it actually reaches that or not. But for a better confirmation of the upside, we need to see a nice good push above the 13.16 level first, and then we will aim for higher levels. On the downside, it's the 12.97 that we're keeping a close eye on. Let's jump into a few pairs now. So the AUDUSD, now looking at this daily chart, you can see that today Aussie dollar is already pushing higher. It's currently aiming for this key area of resistance near the 0.7135 level, marked by the high of yesterday. So basically, if it manages to clear that level, then yep, it is opening the path for itself towards higher levels like the 0.7204 or even higher. But of course, for now, guys, be very careful. Actually, let me just get rid of a few of these lines, because these are slightly no longer relevant. So certainly this is when we will aim for a little bit higher here. Don't forget that we do have some downside lines here that could also hold the bulls down. So like, for example, this little area here, this little downside resistance line taken from the high of the 7th of June last year. So also something for you guys to keep an eye on. So in a way, even if we continue seeing this one traveling further up here, this is where the upside could get limited. But if we do see a nice push above this, then yep, we could aim higher in the longer term. So in a way, for the longer term, from the longer term perspective, if we see a nice push above the 0.7295 level, this is when it could become more exciting for bulls, for those long-term bulls who like to keep their positions for a longer time. And this is, of course, this is that level, because it was marked here by the high of the 31st of January. So a nice good push above this, yep, could open the path. But for now, from the very short-term perspective, the 0.7135 level, this is where we're keeping a close eye on today. If this gets a nice push, then yep, we could see further acceleration to the upside, maybe even actually reaching the 0.7204 level. Let's see what it wants to do around there. But if this decides to reverse back down, now for us, let's say, to get comfortable with the downside here, we would need to see a drop below the 0.7555 level from these recent lows that we saw here in the beginning of this week. So in a way, the 0.7055 level could be that gateway towards slightly lower levels. And yep, of course, we will keep a close eye on the psychological 0.70 level as well, but slightly below that we do have the 0.6970. And just kind of, if we jump into a 4-hour chart, you can see that the 0.6970 level, it was going back here, way back in history. Let me just drag this one back down. Right, guys, let me just bear with me. It may need to jump into a daily chart. So this is the one I'm talking about. So this is the low of February 2016. So this is that level this one level, that's the level basically. So of course, before we could reach that, we need to clear a few of these key support zones. But for now, guys, it seems to be that the downside could be slightly off the table. So keep your eyes on the 0.7135 level first. Jumping into EURJPY. Now this one is stuck in this little, well, somewhat of a range, let's put it that way. And of course, for now, we're just going to continue monitoring it, continue observing some key resistance levels. Certainly it's trying to climb higher right now. You can see that. Let's see if it actually manages to do that, because if it manages to break above the 125.35 level, that's great, because it already had an attempt to do that. But if it manages to move past that to the upside here and starts clearing the 50 EMA here on the 4-hour chart, now for a better confirmation, guys, for a better confirmation of the upside, we need to break above these levels right here at around 125.95. These were near the highs of the 4th of February, so a nice good pop above the 125.95 could open the door towards higher levels like the 127 zone or even higher. But for now, guys, of course, this is a little bit of a drag here as well. It's kind of grinding slowly higher, but we need to see a nice good strong move before we kind of get comfortable with the upside here. So if this decides to reverse and drops below this little short-term tentative upside support line, and then travels below this little area here, around the 124.15 zone, now this is where it could get comfortable and with the downside at least for a little bit more, and we will target then the 123.40 or even the 122.55 level. So for now, guys, certainly it looks more positive than negative, but again, we need to see a few levels getting cleared first in order to kind of get comfortable with the upside. And the levels that we're going to be keeping a close eye on are the 125.35 and of course the 125.95. so keep your eyes on that one. Jumping into USDCHF, now this one had a nice run. Of course, from the 10th of January it continued to move a little higher, kind of forming really, now we can draw this little tentative upside support line here. But you can see that after spiking on Monday this week, after spiking higher during the Asian morning, you can see that the pair managed to almost reach the same level here. Just maybe she fell shy of a few pips of hitting that level here, that spike high here. And now it's kind of balancing near the 1.0088 level, so 1.009. Let's put, we can round it up a little bit. For now, we're going to remain very cautious. We could see maybe a bit of a correction here back down, and then maybe if this upside support line remains intact, we could see maybe a rebound and a push back up again. But for now, probably the suggestion here is going to be to be very cautious. Certainly we could see this one continuing to the upside, especially if it gets above the 1.01 level. So another, in a way, psychological level here, the 1.01. If it does get a nice push above that, then we could target this high here around the 13, and the high that we saw here around the 13th of November, and that was approximately around the 1.0130. So a nice good push above the 1.01 level could open the path towards this little high here at 1.0130. So keep your eyes on that one. If this decides to reverse lower now, and judging by this daily chart, you can see that it's dropping lower a little bit. Let's jump into a 4-hour chart to see what's happening exactly. So in a way, you can see that it still remains above this pivot, so the bulls are kind of still trying to hold the pair above it, but you can see they kind of failed to drive above this 1.00995 level. I'm not talking already about the 5 pips higher level, the 1.01. But for now, guys, still probably for a better confirmation of the upside, keep an eye on this 1.01 level. A nice good pop above it could open the path towards higher levels. On the downside, if we start dropping below the pivot here, which is around the 1.0075 zone, this is where it could become interesting for the bears, at least from the short-term perspective, and we could see maybe a retest of this upside support line. So keep your eyes on that one. Let's see if it actually happens. And the last pair I want to quickly touch on, and that's GBPUSD. Now, before we jump into a 4-hour, quickly the daily. So looking at this picture, you can see this still kind of remains above this this short-term upside support line taken from the lows of the 12th of December, but yesterday kind of almost managed to reach that line, but it also at the same time it remains below this downside resistance line, which is taken from the highs of January. So for now, from the very short-term perspective, and if we jump into a 4-hour chart, in a way, the thing here is actually to wait, because looking at this picture here, it's in a way you could say that it's coiling up, and for now, until we see a nice move out through one of these lines, to be honest, we're probably going to remain neutral and just continue observing it, because if this decides to drop below this upside support line, then yep, wonderful. This is wonderful news for the bears, and especially if the rate travels below the 1.281615 level, approximately there. If the rate falls below that, then yep, further declines are possible. This is where we could then target some of these other try to find, let's say, some of these other support zones, like for example one of them could be this 1.2710 level, approximately there, guys. This could be that area for a possible test, but only if we see initially a drop below this upside support line, and also a drop below the 128.15 level. So keep your eyes on this one. On the upside, if this decides to travel back up and breaks above the this downside resistance line and gets above the 129.25 level, now this is where it could become more exciting for the bulls, because then we could aim for slightly higher levels. Of course, these higher levels that we saw in last week as well, of course. But for now, probably, guys, remain neutral on this one. Continue watching this, and if we do see wait for a break, a confirmation break, let's put it that way, wait for that, and then probably react on it. So because at this point in time, I mean, because this pair is so driven by the news around Brexit, so be very cautious what comes out from UK, and yep, then act accordingly, let's put it that way. Okay, guys, I hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and if you want to join me later on at my traders tea time, and that's 14:15 GMT time. But for now, I hope you have a wonderful trading day, guys. Thank you very much, and bye bye.